When you're standing in a small home studio with a budget mic that sounded great online, only to discover it sounds like a paper-thin whisper when you actually record a full-size drum kit, it's a gut punch. I've seen that scene play out too many times, people buying cheap all-purpose condensers, only to find they're forced to re-record because the mic just can't handle the dynamics they need. That's why I want to start this review by asking, is there a smarter, more adaptable option that actually lives up to the hype without turning your wallet into a regret? The answer lives in the Universal Audio Sphere DLX, a modeling microphone that promises to give you 38 classic mic personalities in one unit. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the category we're talking about here isn't just any microphone. This is a digital modeling mic, which means it sits at the intersection of hardware and software. The premise is simple: you buy one physical capsule and, via internal DSP, you can emulate a range of vintage mics from a warm Neumann U47 to a punchy Shure SM57 without ever having to buy the real thing. That sounds like a dream for a freelancer who does everything from acoustic guitar demos to brass sections, but the reality hinges on how well those models translate into real-world recordings. I tested the Sphere DLX in a typical mid-size room with a modest acoustic treatment, just a few bass traps and a couple of reflection panels. My first use case was recording an acoustic guitar for a YouTube tutorial. I set the mic to the classic large diaphragm cardioid model that mimics a vintage ribbon. The result was a warm, slightly rolled-off tone that matched the sound of a high-end ribbon mic I own, but without the need for a phantom power supply. What impressed me here wasn't just the tone, but the flexibility. With a single tap on the front panel, I could switch to a condenser-type pattern and get a clearer top end, all while the mic stayed in the same spot. That eliminates the need to physically move gear around the room for subtle tonal shifts. The second scenario involved a small horn section, 2 trumpets, and a sax recorded in stereo using the Sphere's dual gold-sputtered diaphragms. The mix ability to capture a true stereo image from a single capsule is rare. Most engineers would need a matched pair of condensers, plus a carefully positioned XY or ORTF technique. With the DLX, I simply selected the built-in stereo mode, and the 2 diaphragms recorded a spacious, balanced image that retained the instrument's individual character. The low-end punch was surprisingly solid for what is essentially a digital emulation of classic ribbon and cardioid patterns. Now, let's talk about the hidden trade-offs. The biggest practical weakness I noticed was latency. Because the mic processes the signal internally, there is a slight delay, just enough that if you're monitoring directly through headphones, you'll catch a faint lag. In a live performance or streaming situation, that could be distracting. The manufacturer does not claim zero latency monitoring, so it's something to keep in mind if you need real-time feedback. Another point worth noting is the learning curve. The front panel presents a menu of 38 mic models, but the naming conventions can be a bit cryptic if you're not familiar with classic mic lore. You'll spend a few minutes scrolling through options before you find the one that matches the tone you're after. It's not a deal-breaker, but it does mean you need to allocate a little extra time to get comfortable with the interface. Who should buy the Sphere DLX? If you're a home studio musician, podcaster, or indie producer who regularly jumps between instruments, acoustic guitars, strings, brass, even spoken word, this mic can replace a small library of physical mics. The cost of acquiring even half of those 38 classic microphones in their analog form would be well beyond the price of the Sphere. For content creators who need quick tonal changes without swapping gear, the convenience factor alone is massive. That same flexibility also appeals to educators who run classroom recording sessions: one mic, one interface, multiple teaching scenarios. The device's compact footprint means it won't dominate a cramped desk, and its dual diaphragm design can handle stereo applications without an additional mic. On the flip side, if you're a specialist who only records a single instrument type, say, a heavy metal guitarist who only needs a hard-hitting, high-gain dynamic mic, investing in a dedicated, purpose-built mic might still make sense. Those niche users often prefer a mic that's optimized for their specific source, and some may still favor analog units for that particular color they feel a digital model can't fully replicate. Also, if you're a purist who relies heavily on analog workflow, the slight latency and the need for an external power source the sphere draws from a DC power adapter could be a nuisance. From a value perspective, the real advantage of the Sphere DLX isn't just the headline of 38 classic mics. It's the ability to experiment without the cost risk. Imagine you're a songwriter who wants to audition the